Hello, this is Yummy Pajama Man, and today we're going to learn about returning a value from a function. So in this module, as you can see, we've defined our function for func, short for function, and you've seen the augmented operator here before, and then the print statement, and then what's new for you guys is the return statement down below. So we're defining the function. So down at the very last line of the function, it says return var1, in which case we pass a value if we called it. So let's say we called it here, which I did. If I said function name passing a 5, so that would mean 5 would be assigned to the local variable var1 up here. Then down to here we're using an augmented operator. As you learned last time, we used the plus equal sign operator, but right now we're looking at minus equal sign operator, or the augmented operator. The augmented operator. So this is actually another syntax to look at for this is actually var1 assignment operator var1, which we pass 5, so since 5 is assigned to var1, it would actually be var1 assignment operator 5 minus 1, which would assign var1 to 4. Then down here it says the value of var1 inside func1 is 4, because I passed 5, but I decrement it by 1, so the output in the process of running this function would be 4. And then after that, it'll go to the last line and see that it needs to return a value, which is var1, the variable, which the variable var1 contains 4. So this function right here, after running its process and after I give it its input, it's going to return a 4. So this 4 will be assigned to val, the variable named val. And I use this right here just to separate each section. Another separation for the section, another separation for the section. This will print a blank line, and this will also print a blank line as well. So I just use this to separate. And so yeah, let me give you the first, or actually what this actually shows. So this function will print out this, the value of var1 inside func1 is 4, and then it'll assign it to val, and then that's it. That should be the first line. So if we run the module, it'll give us a lot of stuff, as you can see. So the first prompt will be the value of var1 inside func1. So we're seeing this prompt is 4. So what's happening is we are defining the function first. That's great. It goes down here and sees if there's any syntax error. Goes down to here, sees if there's any syntax error as well. The whole time it's trying to look for syntax error. And since there's no syntax error in my program, that means there's no, well, in C++ they call it compiler error, but since we're using an interpreter, it's called an interpreter error. But since there's no syntax error and or the same thing is calling it interpreter error, then I'm able to run the program. As you can see the output. So since I'm able to run the program, there's no runtime error, okay, because I'm able to go from the beginning to the end, and I'm at the end of the prompt. So no runtime error. And lastly, there's any check for logical error, which is for us. I check to see if there's any logical error in here, and I see that there's no logical error. So I don't see anything that's outputting that I don't want. So everything I see that's outputted, it's okay. So that means there's no logical error. So so the first it checks for the compiler error, and then the runtime error. And then for me, I check for any logical error. So since everything's good, my program is perfect, for me at least. But there are a couple ways that we can make this better as well, which I'll go over a little bit later. So as I was saying, for the first prompt, it'll give us this, and then the 2 spaces, and then it'll run the process of this, and it'll give us a print statement, and then it'll assign the value 4 to val, and then down here it says the value in main is what we assigned to val, which is 4. Okay, what we returned from this function will be assigned to the variable val. So the second prompt will be the value in main is 4. Then the third prompt will be the value returned is, now this is interesting. I called the function twice, but for the argument of the outer function here, I'm actually calling a function here. So what's going to happen is if the program runs across a line where it has a function in it, it'll always run that function first before actually printing out the value returned is blah blah blah. It'll actually try to find anything that has a function in it, and it'll run that first before continuing with the print function. Remember, it has to look at the innermost function first, which is func2. So if we go up here and pass to the local variable var1, var1 will be equal to now 1. We pass 2, decrement it by 1, so now the 1 will be assigned to var1. So now it's going to give us the prompt, the value of var1 inside func1 for this part. So after the main, it's going to say, where's the main? It's going to say the value of var1 inside func1 is 1. That's where we are right now. It'll run the process of this. So after you see that prompt, it's going to return 1 to the argument of the outer function here. Okay, so the argument for the outer function named func is going to have 1. So if we go back up here again, 1 will be assigned to this local variable var1. Then down here you do var1 equal to 1 minus 1, which is 0. Down here you'll see the value of var1 inside func1 is 0. So we're here. Now it's going to return 0. If we go back down to here, this whole thing will return 0. So now the final output before the dash 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 should be the value. Yeah, the value returned is 0. Okay. So any innermost function it finds, it's going to run that first. Okay, so innermost, then the next innermost, and then finally the outermost function here. And then we see this section right here. So yeah, you've seen that. Now down here, if you remember list, we've used list before. Remember we used the range built-in function. So this range built-in function will actually return a list. Okay, but right here I'm actually explicitly saying, oh, list right here, and I'm assigning that list to func list. So that's all I'm going to say about the list. I will go into more detail about it later on. But I just wanted to show you that I can actually return a value from a function, as I'm doing right here, and then put it inside a list. So func7, if we pass 7 to the function, this will run first. So up here you pass 7, var1, var1 will be 6, because we're calling the function and we're passing 7. Now var1 will be 6. Print the value of var1 inside func1 is 6 for the next prompt. Here we go for this one. So that means this will return 6. After this prompt, it'll return 6. So this in between the brackets is going to contain a number 6. And then I go down here and say print func list is should output the bracket, bracket 6, because that's what's returned inside of this list. Now for the for loop, we've seen this for clause before, and so the whole syntax of the for clause is for variable in list. And since the built-in range function is going to return a list, it's actually going to return a list that has 3 elements. See, this one only has 1 element because only 1 number is stored inside of this list. This will return a list of 3 elements, because if we go to the function, up here, we pass the 4 into here, so var1 will be equal to 3 because we're decrementing it by 1, and then it'll give us the output of, so in the range function it's going to give us the value of 3. So yeah, you've seen this a lot, so I've explained this a lot. It'll give us return 3, so the range will be parentheses 3 parentheses, and since there's only one argument in the built-in range function, it's going to give us, or we're going to give it its end value. So that means the range is going to start from 0, 1, 2, and this function range actually will return a list starting from 0, 1, 2. So this is for var and bracket 0, 1, 2, bracket, colon, and then print and for loop. But since we actually did that, it's going to give us this output up here. So after the func list, it'll give us the output of value of r1 inside func1 is 3. 3 right here. And then for the for loop, in for loop, we're going to call this again, and then it'll just give us the same output as we see it again right here. And then it'll run the print statement after running the innermost function. So it'll be in for loop 3, in for loop 3. It'll run it'll iterate again in the for loop, so it'll give us the same output here, and then finally for the third iteration here for the for loop. Now we're in the next section down here. I use an if-else clause. In the if clause, I use the function yet again. So this function will return 4 after giving us this prompt. So down here it'll be value of r1 inside func1 is 4, and it'll return 4. So if 4 greater than, give us the prompt here again. Since I passed 4, it's going to give us 3. So it's going to say if 4 greater than 3. So we get these two prompts right here. And since this expression will return true, since 4 is greater than 3, so that's true. So it'll go into the body here and print the last statement that you see. First func greater than second func. And that's it. That was a mouthful. And the whole point of doing all this is just to show you that you can use a function, since we're going to actually return a value, since it's going to return var1, which is that value that we've seen so many times. So it's returning a value. You can put a function that returns a value anywhere where you can put a hard value. So right here, I could have just put 4. So 4 assigned to val a hard value of 4. So since I can put a hard value here and assign it to val, I can actually just use a function to give me that value. I can also put it in the for clause. As you can see in the range function, I could have said range parentheses 3 parentheses, but I use the function to return that value. You can also see it down here. Instead of saying if 4 greater than 3, instead of putting hard values here and here, I can actually put in the function itself that returns a value. So as you can see it pretty much everywhere. And then I used it inside of the argument calling the function itself. I can also put it again here if I wanted to. Just make it go in itself over and over again. You can do that. Again, you can call a function in which case in the definition of the function you're returning a value. You can put it anywhere where you can put a hard value in your main program. You can also return a hard value here. You don't have to use a variable. So if I return a hard value of 3 right here, my output should be like all 3s right here. So if I'm not crazy, or no, it's not all 3s. The value of r1 inside func1 is 4. That's weird. Oh, it's outputting. I'm sorry. I'm looking at var1. It still gives it right here. I'm sorry. Yeah, everything else should be 3 if I'm not looking at the value of r1 inside func1. This one right here. And see. So if I put, let's do this one right here. So I put in 5, and that makes it 4. So it gives me the prompt of the first one, which is 4. It returns 3, so it assigns it to val, and then the value in main is 3. So we get 4, 3. Yeah, right here. So I was wrong. So inside the function, it'll give a different value. So inside function is 6, and the value of R1 inside func1 is 3. So okay, so you see that. So you can also return a hard value of 3 as well. It's giving us the different value because I'm actually printing var1 right here. But yeah, just to show you, you can return a hard value or a variable, which I had before, var1 right here. Now, do you see anything in this program that's repeating over and over again? As you can tell, this part right here is repeating. So it's probably a good idea to actually put this into a function itself, instead of actually having to repeat the code over and over again. So you know how to do that. So you do def, name of the function, which you can call it dash, and you're not going to pass anything because you're just going to output this, and then you can put that under the function and then call that function dash, so you don't have to write this out over and over again. I won't do it right now because I want to keep the video short and to the point. So that's all I can think of today. And yeah, so pretty much just what you can take away from this video is that you can put, if you're returning a value, you can put that function anywhere where you can put in a hard value. Like here, for example, here you can put in a hard value. Here, here. You can put it inside of the function itself. Yeah, but just remember that it's going to run the first inner function, and then the next inner function, and then finally the outer function right here when it encounters this line, for example. So yeah, I'll keep it like that. The list function, or I'm sorry, the list itself, I'll go over later on, so you don't have to worry about that. Just remember that we used the list in the for clause, as we used a couple videos back as well. So yep. So that's pretty much it. So I'll see you in the next tutorial.